Aegon the Conqueror's sword was called Blackfyre, the Sword of Kings. Even sheathed, the blade could be mistaken for no other. Various histories state that Aenys the First, Maegor the Cruel, Jaehaerys the Conciliator, Aegon the Second, and Daeron the First all wielded Blackfyre. And according to Sir Eustace Osgrey, during the reign of Aenys the First Targaryen, every Targaryen king since the conquest had wielded Blackfyre. So if Eustace was right, then every king through Aegon IV had Blackfyre. But Aegon IV, Aegon the Unworthy, he was the last king to wield it because he bestowed Blackfyre upon one of his bastards, Daemon Waters. According to Sir Eustace, when Prince Daemon had Blackfyre in his hand, there was not a man to equal him. Not Ulrich Dane with Dawn, no, nor even the Dragon Knight with Darksister. Daemon Waters was a badass, allegedly. Upon receiving Blackfyre, Daemon Waters changed his name to Daemon Blackfyre, founder of House Blackfyre, and leader of the first of the 5 Blackfyre Rebellions. Daemon had tried to take the Iron Throne from his half-brother, King Daeron II Targaryen, but he failed to do so. He actually died in the attempt. As Daemon died, his son, young Aemon, he took up Blackfyre, but just like his father, young Aemon was brought down by the arrows of Bloodraven and his private guards, the Raven's Teeth. Then, Bloodraven's half-brother, Aegor Rivers, otherwise known as Bittersteel, he grabbed Blackfyre. He attempted to rally Daemon's forces, and he charged Bloodraven. According to Maester Yandel, the author of the in-world book titled The World of Ice and Fire, Bittersteel met his half-brother Bloodraven on the battlefield, and a mighty duel ensued, which left Bloodraven blinded in one eye and sent Bittersteel fleeing. For years now, many fans assume that Bittersteel fled with Blackfyre in hand. It even says that on the Westeros.org website. But we don't know that. Nothing in the release canon states that that happened. And as you're about to see, it makes way more sense that Bittersteel left without Blackfyre. So, what actually happened to Blackfyre? Did Bittersteel take it with him as he fled to Essos? And if so, how come he did not bestow the sword on Daemon II Blackfyre ahead of the Second Blackfyre Rebellion? Alright, maybe he didn't believe in Daemon Blackfyre or the opportunity at the time, that's fine. But if Bittersteel still had Blackfyre and he went over to Essos, then why didn't he bestow the sword upon Aegon the First Blackfyre, whom he did support in the Third Blackfyre Rebellion? Maybe he wanted to use it himself, maybe he wanted to fight with Blackfyre. Well, during the Third Blackfyre Rebellion, Bittersteel had a second duel versus his half-brother Bloodraven, after which he was captured. So if Bittersteel still had the sword before the Third Blackfyre Rebellion, and he had kept it for himself instead of bestowing it upon Aegon the First Blackfyre, then why is there no mention of the Targaryens getting back Blackfyre after he was captured? Think about that. And lastly, there was never any other mention of Blackfyre ever since the First Blackfyre Rebellion. So what probably happened is that he lost Blackfyre after his first duel with his half-brother, Bloodraven. And this isn't crazy, it's happened before. It happened with the Valyrian Stillsword Lamentation during the Dance of the Dragons, another family civil war. During the storming of the Dragon Pit, Sir Willem Royce was killed, and Lamentation went missing. Someone carried it off, and no one knows who has it now. So that's where I stand. It makes the most sense that someone carried off the sword Blackfyre after Bittersteel and Bloodraven's first duel during the First Blackfyre Rebellion, meaning it's out there somewhere. And not necessarily in Essos. Blackfyre may be in Westeros right now. We may have already seen it. You know the theory. Longclaw. Blackfyre is Longclaw. Here's my little Bridge 4 type spin on that age-old Longclaw theory. 3 clues.
It was my father's sword. His father before him. The Mormonts have carried it for 5 centuries.
But the only evidence of that is hearsay. Jeor Mormont told Jon that. I don't think Jeor is intentionally lying so as to deceive Jon, but I do think that he's an unreliable narrator. It would be great if we got a look into the in-world book called Inventories, but for now, Jeor Mormont's statement is the only time that we as readers hear about Longclaw's backstory, and it's very thin. House Mormont is poor, yet they have a Valyrian steel blade? It's not unheard of, but it is fishy. Meanwhile, Blackfyre, the most legendary Valyrian steel sword in the story, is missing. And just like Longclaw, Blackfyre is a bastard sword. Even sheath, Blackfyre could be mistaken for no other. Unless you change the pommel, which is something that has already happened once to Longclaw during the current timeline, from a bearhead pommel to a wolf's head pommel.
I thought a wolf was more appropriate for you than a bear.
Little did we know, that may have been the second transformation. It may have gone from Blackfyre to Bear Longclaw to Wolf Longclaw. And check this out. Longclaw was described in Book 1 as having 3 fullers, 3 grooves in it. Ignore this clip art here for Longclaw, but look at this picture of Blackfyre from the World of Ice and Fire. George R.R. Martin is very picky with his art. He has said that numerous times, and this artwork of Blackfyre has 3 grooves. So clue number 1, they are both bastard swords with 3 grooves, and from a storytelling perspective, we have already seen Longclaw undergo a transition, so this may just be the second transition. Clue number 2. When George gave Jon Longclaw, and Jon held it, for the very first time ever, he thought these 2 things in regards to his father's Valyrian steel sword, Ice. First, how no bastard could ever hope to wield a father's sword. And second, how it was awful for him to have ever even thought about stealing his own brother Robb's birthright, the sword Ice. But he had. Just so happens, those 2 things that Jon's thinking about are at the heart of the story around the sword Blackfyre. The bastard Daemon Waters wielded his father's sword, which was bestowed upon him in place of his half-brother, future king Daemon II Targaryen. Do you really think that it's just a coincidence that George R. R. Martin had Jon think about these 2 things as he received Longclaw and held it for the first time? I don't. Y'all know me. I look at Jon's thoughts as just one of the many times that the wizard George R. R. Martin has presented us with subtle but brilliant clues. Longclaw is, in fact, Blackfyre. And here's one more that's fun. Clue number 3. Do you remember that wild dream from Jon Snow's second to last chapter so far, the chapter right before he's stabbed? In that dream, Jon is armored in black ice, the opposite of Blackfyre. Yet in his hand, his blade burned red. Fire. Jon's holding fire. Blackfyre. And that's not even the clue. In that dream, Jon cuts off his own brother's head, Robb Stark. So I look at that as another nod to the brotherly civil war, the Blackfyre Rebellion. Jon's in the dream, holding fire, and he thinks about cutting off his own brother's head. So here's the best part of it all. George R. R. Martin has said that Aegon the Conqueror, King Aegon Targaryen, first of his name, he may have attempted to unify the 7 kingdoms to prepare for the threat from the north, the White Walkers. Lo and behold, Jon Snow, or King Aegon the 6th Targaryen, he's doing just that, unifying the living as best he can to prepare for the threat from the north, just like Aegon the Conqueror. So it turns out, the bastard with the secret backstory is wielding a bastard sword with a secret backstory.
Go on, let's have a look.
At what?
The sword! Show us the sword! 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 Sword!
Next Thursday, we're gonna finally drop the pink ladder video, and get ready. I'm gonna give you an option that you may never have heard of. Stay tuned.